Season 2, Episode 4 of The Mandalorian. Got an awesome review coming right up along with some Easter eggs right here on All Comics Access. Hey, how you doing? This is Joe, the Beast McCoy, aka the Mixed Marvel, and I got to tell you, this episode was absolutely phenomenal. In case you're wondering which one I'm talking about, well, you know, the latest in the epic saga of The Mandalorian. This episode was directed by none other than Mr. Carl Weathers, aka Apollo Creed, as some of us know him. So what's pretty amazing was this was another one of those great episodes that bridged the gap between the Mandalorian's journey, from basically what I'm noticing over time. Even though he's on one particular path, each episode is filling in the gaps in different ways. So we know he's on the journey for Ahsoka Tano, but let's be honest, people, we saw that ship. I mean, when you have pieces of it falling off, usually not a good sign. I have to say though, it was pretty adorable seeing our baby Yoda, in there trying to fix it. I thought that was pretty hilarious. A little reminiscent of like a baby Groot on Guardians of the Galaxy. It was pretty awesome. Even though it did not work out, Mando sat down with baby Yoda, had a little bit of soup, and headed back to the lovely planet of Nevarro, which we are familiar with from Season 1. Before entering the planet, we notice a scene opening up of the underground layer where the Mandalorians once dwelled, as we very well remember. But what's interesting, we notice immediately that the mythosaur crest that once dwelled above the open doorway is no longer there. So that lets you know that the armorer has moved on elsewhere. We notice on the underground scene a gang of Qualish. If you're wondering why these particular aliens look so familiar, you're probably thinking of Ponda Baba, who was trying to muscle up our buddy Luke in the New Hope saga. So what's pretty cool, we see our girl Cara Dune coming in to handle business. We find out quickly that she is the town marshal, ready to lay down the law. And we definitely saw that her awesome UFC skills came in handy in this particular scene. And she handled business, took them down, and got the stolen goods. What was pretty funny though was definitely the adorable looking creature that greeted her, and she chose to befriend. If you're wondering why this particular creature looks so familiar, no, it's not a space ferret. It is in actuality a lava meerkat. These particular meerkats made their first appearance in Season 1 on the banks of the underground lava river. Alright, so as our buddy Din Djarin arrives to the planet, he is greeted by Greef Karga and Cara Dune, which is pretty awesome. Now, what's great, they worked around some favors and things, seeing that they're, an awesome trio of friends. Now, what's interesting, we notice one of the particular mechanics. He seems like he's up to something. And what's even more interesting is his actual species. He is of the Mebonese species. And if you're wondering why this particular species may seem a little bit familiar, we remember this particular species from the Solo movie. Now, something that I found very encouraging and awesome, we saw that Nevarro took a very different turn as far as how the town is looking. We remember it's dark and gloomy in the first season. The hustle and bustling area was looking pretty good. Everyone was very upbeat. All the grime and grit was gone. And what was pretty awesome, we saw the IG-11 robot paid homage to. Definitely they owe a great deal to the IG-11 robot because he sacrificed his life in order to make sure that the day was saved in season 1. So then we move on to another interesting scene. In actuality, the cantina where all the bounty hunters once dwelled is now school. What's pretty cool, we see that the protocol droid is teaching all the wonderful kids. Now, what's pretty interesting, if you take time and slow down and listen to the particular lessons she's teaching, you'll notice some pretty awesome little hints of the Star Wars universe. Alright, so we first take note of the star map in which she's teaching on. It is much like the particular one that we've seen in times past of the original Star Wars trilogy. Also, she gives a lesson on 5 major trade routes, asking the class questions about those. And if we remember in particular that, a lot of the Star Wars saga and the conflict started over the taxation of trade routes. If you're wondering by what means are these trade routes so significant, trade routes in particular are plots through hyperspace in which a lot of things were ran through. Possibly the most famous one is the Kessel Run that Han Solo did. So that's just one of the few things about the trade route. Awesome Baby Yoda had a little bit of appetite. Yeah, when he was sat down in the classroom, basically, he nice to try to ask the kid for some macaroons, but little fella's hungry. And I guess, kids will be kids, and he said, hey, what's mine is mine. But that wasn't good enough for Baby Yoda. He used his force powers ever so right. He definitely grabbed those delicious macaroons as we saw. So I kind of like that part. We see that, Cara Dune and Grief Karga are in need of a little assistance from our buddy Din Djarin while his vehicle's getting fixed. So they head on over. Now what's pretty interesting, before they get their hands on the particular mission at hand, we encounter a familiar face, one of the particular bounties that Din Djarin had got in season 1. The Nevarro, who was caught in season 1, who basically is working for Grief Karga because he has to work off all the debt that he racked up over time. Now, what's pretty interesting, he says something significant. Even though he was encased in the carbonite, he still couldn't see particularly well. We in particular remember this. Sounds familiar because in Return of the Jedi, when Han Solo was thawed out of the carbonite material, he had a bit of a problem with his eyesight as well. Alright, so we learned that the Empire has a base that's on the planet. And basically because, the area is up and coming, of course, Grief Karga stresses the importance of getting rid of this so-called abandoned Empire base because they want to be known for trade in the galaxy. And definitely our buddy Din Djarin decides to jump in on action and assist them. We notice Din Djarin, he takes the initiative and goes and flies up there and sees what's going on. And obviously when you see the stormtrooper dropping down, it definitely is pretty functional. And we definitely know from season 1 that the Empire had a great presence on the planet. And for them to not be fully uprooted lets us know there's trouble going about. So basically they make their way in there and ready to make some moves. So we notice that the Nevarro individual, he got pretty excited when noticing a Trexler Marauder ship. And it's pretty similar to the Imperial troop transport of last season. Also, what's pretty cool, the code cylinder that they're using to get through various areas is pretty reminiscent of the one that appeared in The New Hope. And what's pretty cool, we notice that once they get to that particular console area where they want to overheat it by damaging it to destroy the base, all the particular controls are very similar to the tractor beam controls of the Death Star. Alright, so as they're making their way through, they are noticing more and more things that are in depth about this particular Empire base. A cloning lab. They were not ready for that. Upon entering the entering the cloning lab area, we notice that there are two guys at the console area. Now, if you notice, before they get taken down, they have some very interesting patches that are on their uniform. Now, these patches look pretty familiar because they first appeared on young clone troopers back during the Camino era when they were first getting trained. Upon learning of the Empire's true intentions, basically they see that even though the child, our baby Yoda, has a high M count, aka midi-chlorians, which we learn are essentially what make up the Force, that when they attempted to give the blood to the subjects that they are attempting to clone, that there was some rejection. Snoke remember he was a leader of the First Order, and the beginning trials of the Snoke clone in the Bacta tank gives away that it possibly could have been someone along his lines, because we hear that the music is playing in the background, the same music that was playing during the most recent trilogies. Upon destroying things and trying to get out of there, the chase scene is starting off. Then Djarin goes off to kind of handle his business while Greef Karga, Cara Dune, and their other worker, I guess you could call them, all jumped in that ship he was eyeing. It was pretty crazy. Cara Dune's a go-getter because she drove that thing right over the cliff of the base and had it going. It was pretty cool to see the scout troopers, bust out their speeders ready to chase them down. That was very reminiscent of Return of the Jedi. One of my favorite scenes, basically chasing down those funny little Ewoks that we all love and miss. So, that it's definitely going on. Why this scene was so intense, at least Cara Dune and Greef Karga, two very key component characters, and you hope they don't get damaged, you hope they don't get hurt, but we saw some pretty slick maneuvering. I have to say, Cara Dune, one heck of a driver. Alright, so basically while the chase is afoot, we see the same type of TIE fighters getting after him after it seems the scout troopers were failing. And, we definitely know that these particular TIE fighters are no joke. Because definitely when Moff Gideon was riding this particular kind of TIE fighter, it got a little bit hectic, But it was some slick maneuvering. In the nick of time, Mr. Din Djarin saves the day, which was pretty awesome. He's just like this epic, clutch type of Mandalorian. I have to say, what I loved too was Baby Yoda was pretty excited, throwing his hands up. I kid you not, I don't know why. That little package he was holding reminds me of a Capri Sun. Love those things growing up. Alright, anyway, so as we're moving along, we see that his ship is fixed and all seems well. After the day is saved and they're moving on, that Mr. Carson Teva, a familiar X-Wing pilot we know from previous episodes, is making a stop by. It's his job as individual of the New Republic to make sure things are okay. What's interesting, though, is the attitude towards him. While Greef Karga, is an upstanding citizen and, abiding by the law and stuff nowadays, his attitude towards, Mr. Teva is a reflection of how, relationships between the Outer Rim and the core worlds aren't always on the best standing. Now, what's interesting, we see that Carson Teva is genuinely concerned about what's going on. And also, he is aware that there's more than meets the eye with everything in the Outer Rims in his explorations. Carson Teva is talking with the town marshal, Miss Cara Dune. Now, we know from Season 1 that Cara Dune is a resident, or was a resident, of Alderaan. And we remember Alderaan from the first original trilogy, when unfortunately the planet was destroyed by the Death Star. We see that there's a great deal of pain brought up when Mr. Carson Teva speaks of her home world. But he definitely reaches out to her because he knows that she has a great track record, has definitely helped out the Rebel Alliance in times past. Now, what's pretty cool, he's nice enough to leave a Rebel Alliance marker with her, which could possibly encourage her to work with the New Republic or either join the New Republic. Either way, it's awesome to see that, everything's working together, and it could possibly leave the door open. But that particular mechanic that we noticed in the beginning, he was up to something. It seems he's some sort of spy for the Empire, and he contacts, Moff Gideon and his crew to let them know what's going on. Now, what's pretty interesting, when it introduces the ship that Moff Gideon and his particular Empire crew are on, is the same opening as the Star Destroyer from the original trilogy. Now, what's pretty cool, as Moff Gideon gets this information, he walks into a particular area of the ship where we notice some very evil-looking figures that are in this lab kind of setup, and they are in actuality Dark Troopers. Now, what's pretty significant, Dark Troopers haven't really made a big impact in mainstream Star Wars entertainment, but we do remember them from back in the 90s from a particular video game by the name of Dark Forces. What's pretty interesting, the insignia on one of the lab technicians too is the same as the Imperial Department of Military Research, which has only ever had a brief appearance in the Star Wars novel Tarkin. Even though Baby Yoda's blood was rejected as far as being used with the clones to make them force sensitive, is there a possibility that something could open up if they try to find Ahsoka Tano? Considering that her species is a little bit more similar to the humanoid kind of thing, it could be a strong possibility that possibly her blood type could be misused to benefit the Empire. Only time will find out. Alright folks, so that pretty much wraps up everything on this awesome episode. My 2 cents on the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. I'm loving just the build up to everything. I am super excited for the next episode. Definitely for seeing our girl Ahsoka Tano, because upon discovering her, I'm definitely hopeful she will be able to fill in the missing gaps of our lovely Baby Yoda and give enlightenment on a situation. And this, of course, being more in tune with the Force, hey, she's going to connect some major dots for us that I would love to figure out. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps everything up here, All Comics Access. I definitely will keep bringing you these awesome reviews week to week. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't already, make sure to go check out my episode 3 review with some Easter eggs if you haven't already. And before I wrap things up, if you are interested in getting any Mandalorian merchandise, such as your own personal Baby Yoda, some shirts, or whatever may have you, click the link down below. Grab yourself some goodies today so you can be Mandalorian out, much like myself. And before I wrap things up also, make sure to please like the video to help me out. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because I will always be bringing you some more geeked out goodness. Always remember, keep your head up. You're awesome. You do matter. And rise up and geek on.
If you see Francis, tell him I'm looking for him. I need to find him. Let me know where he is.
He's gonna get served.